Welcome, Representative Appleton. This is your first video update of the year. We're at the end of the third week of this long and challenging session right now. What's your view at this point?
Well, it is a challenging session. There's no question about it. On the House side, things are very stable, and we are working as a team on both sides of the aisle, and it really makes for a very good environment. The challenge is what's going to happen in the other body because of the chaos that has started over there. So we may be passing bills out of here. Whether they'll get passed over there is something nobody really knows. So it is a challenge.
You've sponsored several bills so far this session, but I've picked out four that seem to be what I would call highlights, and I want to ask you about each of those. I'll start with this bill that you have that would hopefully reduce tuition for military personnel and veterans and their family members who want to go to college here in Washington State.
The DOD came to me, the Department of Defense, and asked if I would be willing to do the bill that would allow active duty and veterans who are leaving service, who have been in combat situations and in other areas around the world, to have in-state immediate tuition, which the GI Bill would pay for. Those active duty military and veterans have to start using it within the first year. And if they had to wait for in-state residency for 1 year, then they wouldn't be able to qualify for their GI Bill. I believe, and why I did the bill, is that these young men and women and veterans have given up a portion of their lives to protect this country. And they really need the help and the assistance to be able to get back into a productive life in this country. And we know too many veterans and active duty who have come into the workplace can't find jobs. And so we have to help them. And this is my way of contributing to making them healthy, productive members of our society.
The next one sort of stems from a tragedy that took place in your district, and it has to do with increasing the ability of law enforcement to prosecute people who render assistance to criminals who are on the run.
Well, that's an interesting bill. When Trooper Tony was killed, the man who killed him was in a car with a young woman. And when they went to trial, the judge found that they couldn't sentence this young woman for rendering criminal assistance in Trooper Tony's death, but only in the fact that she lied to investigators. So the purpose of the bill is to change that situation somewhat so that prosecutors have another tool in the toolbox when something that horrific happens.
I want to talk now about a bill that certainly should be pleasing to the constituents in your district, and that has to do with possibly reducing ferry fares.
Right, and that bill has the worst title in the world. I think it's because we've had such turnover here at the legislature, but some of the titles just don't reflect what the bill really is. My intent was to stabilize or reduce ferry fares by redistributing the gas tax. Right now, and because of historical data, the ferries only get a half a cent out of the gas tax, even though they're constitutionally part of our highway system. So I want to redistribute that so that ferries get 2 cents, and then roads and bridges and operations and maintenance can have 98 cents. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's very good. We have to stabilize ferry fares or reduce them because families cannot afford to use the ferries, and that's our highway. And, you know, we've been doing this for years, having to pay high fares, and we are actually keeping the rest of the system afloat from Bainbridge and Kingston and Bremerton. And so I'm trying to get them a little relief.
Finally, I want to ask you about your House Bill 1559, which has to do with helping law enforcement officers get better training so that they can stay safer and the people they're interacting with can stay safer in crisis situations, particularly those involving people who are mentally disturbed.
This bill came to me from the Oslings, whose son was shot to death on Bainbridge Island, and he was mentally ill. He didn't have a weapon, but the officers had no ability to work with him. They had never been trained to work with a mentally ill person, and so they didn't know how to interact with him. And unfortunately, it became a terrible tragedy. So the Osleans brought me an idea that if we trained our police officers on how to deal with people who are mentally ill and out of control, it would be better for them, certainly, because I'm sure they're fearful when they see somebody's out of control. And it would be much better for the person that they're interacting with, that they have the education to be able to calm that person down or use non-lethal intervention.
I think that's it for today. We're about out of time, but we'll talk about some more things in future video updates. I appreciate you spending this time with us.
Thank you very much.